Pressing Shift 5 times on the login screen brings up Sticky Keys. Sticky Keys is sethc.exe, so let's rename sethc.exe to sethc1.exe and then copy cmd.exe as sethc.exe. Pressing Shift 5 times now brings up command prompt. Notepad has the old UI when ran from the login screen. Windows on the login screen have rounded corners like they normally do in Windows 11/22H2. In Windows 11/21H2, windows on the login screen have square corners, even though they normally have rounded corners. In Windows 11/22H2, windows on the login screen don't have the mica theme, they instead have a solid light gray title bar. Holding the mouse over the Maximize button doesn't bring up snapping options. Holding the mouse over the Maximize button normally brings up snapping options. When you drag a window around on the login screen, it doesn't come up with that thing at the top. When you drag a window around, it normally comes up with a thing at the top. You can still snap windows to the side on the login screen, but it doesn't ask you what to do with the other half and the preview is solid gray. Normally, when you snap windows to the side it asks you what to do with the other half and the preview is acrylic blur. Paint, WordPad and Microsoft Edge don't work on the login screen. Task Manager works on the login screen, but it doesn't show apps. If you run Explorer from the login screen in Windows 11/22H2, the Windows 11 taskbar comes up, but it doesn't have any icons or clock. Right-clicking the taskbar doesn't do anything. The only thing the taskbar has on it is the notification icon overflow button which works. When I ran Explorer from the login screen in Windows 11/21H2, the Windows 10 taskbar came up. In Windows 11/22H2, if you click on the taskbar, then press Alt F4, the shutdown dialog comes up. What happens if I click Sign Out, since I am already signed out? It closes Explorer and all the apps I had open. You can also launch apps on the Control-Alt-Delete screen. When ran on the Control-Alt-Delete screen, Notepad says a new version of Notepad is available, clicking Install does nothing. On the Control-Alt-Delete screen, when snapping windows to the side, the preview is an acrylic blur, but it doesn't ask you what to do with the other half. Task Manager shows apps when ran on the Control-Alt-Delete screen. The background behind the Control-Alt-Delete screen is black. The Control-Alt-Delete screen has a transparent background. The black background that you normally see on the Control-Alt-Delete screen is actually the black background behind it showing through it. If you click the Control-Alt-Delete screen when there are apps on top of it, it brings the Control-Alt-Delete screen in front of the apps and you can see the apps through the transparent background. But you can't interact with anything behind the Control-Alt-Delete screen because you click the Control-Alt-Delete screen's transparent background, not the apps. If you run Explorer on the Control-Alt-Delete screen, Explorer's desktop icons are visible through the Control-Alt-Delete screen's transparent background. If you minimize the Control-Alt-Delete screen, you can then interact with Explorer's desktop. The right-click menu looks like it does in Windows 10, but with rounded corners. File Explorer windows don't work, neither does Microsoft Edge. If I create a shortcut to Notepad, it works. Display settings and personalize open on the user's desktop. The login screen runs under logonui.exe. What happens if I end logonui.exe? Logonui.exe starts again as soon as I end it. Let's replay that in slow motion. It quickly shows Explorer's desktop, a blur then comes up in front of the desktop and apps, the login then appears, the login background then fades in behind the blur, but in front of the desktop and apps. The Control-Alt-Delete screen also runs under logonui.exe. What happens if you end logonui.exe while on the Control-Alt-Delete screen? It comes up with an error message saying failure to display security and shutdown options. The sign-in process was unable to display security and sign-in options when Control-Alt-Delete was pressed. If the operating system does not respond, press ESC or restart the computer by using the power switch. The UAC prompt also runs under the system user. You can minimize the UAC prompt using Task Manager. You can run Explorer from the UAC prompt screen. The UAC prompt runs under consent.exe. What happens if I end consent.exe? It exits the UAC screen and comes up with an error message on the user's desktop saying incorrect function. Let's install the classic Task Manager. Now I can minimize the login screen. The background behind the login screen is black. If you minimize the login screen while Explorer is running, it shows Explorer's desktop. If I click Display Settings or Personalization, It comes up with an error message saying MS Settings Display or MS Settings Personalization. This file does not have an app associated with it for performing this action. Please install an app or, if one is already installed, create an association in the default app settings page. If I try and open a folder that is on the desktop, it comes up with an error message saying an attempt was made to reference a token that does not exist. Pressing Alt F4 on the desktop brings up the shutdown dialog. Classic Alt-Tab switcher. This is what the Alt-Tab switcher normally looks like in Windows 11 22H2. What happens if I rename logonui.exe? Now what happens if I press Ctrl-Alt-Delete? Now what happens if I sign out? It comes up with an error message saying sign-in process initialization failure. Interactive sign-in process initialization has failed. Please consult the event log for more details. If I reboot, the message comes up again. Every time I press OK, the message comes up again. Pressing Shift 5 times doesn't bring up command prompt, Windows key U doesn't do anything. End of video.